You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. We have kind of been following a lot of the preseason prognostications for LSU. And I don't know how much you pay attention to it. I find it interesting just because I like to sort of check myself. What I mean is, it's so easy, I think, for us sometimes as either graduates of LSU or fans of LSU or people that cover LSU or whatever it is, to look at things through purple and gold glasses. I know it's cliche and people say it all the time, but it's true. I think it's very natural to assume the best for your team, and if you have a question, assume that it's going to be answered to the positive instead of to the negative. So sometimes I like to, and maybe this is just part of like journalistic training. When you are in J school, like you are naturally cynical, and I know that word has a negative connotation, but it's just in a very literal sense. It's basically just questioning to make sure that things are as they appear. I mean, that's how you get answers as a journalist. You keep asking questions. You don't assume certain things. So I always like to say, all right, I know I feel a certain way, but what are other people saying? What are other people thinking that might not have the bias that I could inherently have as a guy who grew up cheering for LSU, loves LSU, went to LSU, all that sort of stuff. So that's why I like to look at, what does Vegas say? What do objective computer metrics say? What do other people who know a lot about college football, what do they say? What do they think? So when you kind of compile these things, you can sometimes notice trends, or at least notice what could be maybe the echo chamber in sports media or internet, Twitter. That's why I sometimes like to look at computer metrics. Not that they're the only metric, but that they're a metric to see what they say. And there's a pretty big disparity among two from ESPN. A few weeks ago, we looked at FPI, which is the Football Power Index that ESPN puts out, and it is a metric. They put data in, and then it spits out a number, and then it rates the teams, and basically a percentage chance of winning whatever games you have. And they favor LSU in 9 of the 12 games. FPI thinks LSU has a better than 50% chance of beating every team on its schedule except for Alabama, Texas A&M, and Auburn. So if that holds, LSU's 9-3, I think people would be thrilled. That is by far the most optimistic viewpoint that we've seen so far from something like that. I'll remind you, Vegas has LSU at 7. A few weeks back, the sportsbook odds maker at Circa said LSU's raw number is actually 5.5, but they knew if they put 5.5 on LSU, the over would get hammered. So they adjusted it to 6.5, and in some spots, you see it at 7. But he said the actual raw number on LSU is 5.5, which is stunning to me. I don't think the floor is that low, by the way. SEC Media Days, the media vote, had LSU 5th in the West. So there's a lot of opinion makers or computers or metrics or polls or whatever. AP poll, college, the coaches poll, LSU unranked in each of those in the preseason for the first time since 2000, Nick Saban's first year. So basically, everything out there is suggesting LSU, except for FPI, is suggesting LSU's probably not going to have a great year. And this might be the final metric that we see come out in the preseason, but it's the SP Plus. And this is a metric that Bill Connolly, who's been a guest on the show a bunch, comes out with every year, and it's based on 3 primary factors. It's returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. Those are the 3 metrics or 3 components that he uses, puts a metric behind them, spits them into the computer, it spits out the ranking. And there's some things in here that are kind of validating. Like when you see Alabama number 1, Georgia number 2, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Clemson, it's kind of validating, right? Like the eye test, what pollsters show is that Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson Michigan, Notre Dame, all right there, are pretty common, what we see everywhere. So in some sense, that's validating. The biggest takeaway, though, for me from the SP Plus is the next tier of SEC schools, this metric loves. And LSU's not one of them. They've got Texas A&M 8th. Ole Miss 9th. Tennessee 10th. Kentucky 11th. Arkansas 14th. Y'all, A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Kentucky 8, 9, 10, 11. Arkansas 14. You scroll down a little further. Mississippi State 20th. Auburn 21st. Just outside of the top 25, Florida's 26, and then LSU's 28th. 28 is about where all the polls have LSU. They're right there. Like, if you look at the also receiving votes, LSU's, I think, right there, maybe 30. So this metric actually looks at LSU the way that the pollsters do. The gigantic surprise is all of the other SEC teams. This SP Plus has 8 teams on LSU's schedule ahead of LSU. And that doesn't even include Georgia, Kentucky. They're basically saying LSU is 11th in the LSU's 28th in the country, but 11th in the SEC. So clearly, this metric loves the SEC. The thing that LSU fans or that won't love so much about this metric, even though they got LSU at 28, which is about on par with what everyone else has for LSU, the Vegas pollsters, the SEC media vote, all the polls, everything. The win total is at 6.5, and the conference win total is at 3. So that effectively tells you they think they'll lose to Florida State, win the other 3 non-conference games, and win 3 conference games, and go 6-6. I still think that's low. I understand that this is a computer algorithm, and I understand that that does fall in line with what the odds makers in Vegas say. But the thing that really makes me question is looking at A&M at 8, Ole Miss at 9, Tennessee at 10, Kentucky at 11, Arkansas at 14, Mississippi State at 20, Auburn at 21. And maybe it's just that we've got to reset how we look at these things. What I mean is Arkansas may be the 14th best team in the country. They just may not be ranked there at the end of the season because they got to go through a meat grinder in the SEC, which is reality for teams in this league. But the same may also be true for LSU. So we'll start to get these answers a week from Sunday, and it'll be really fun to stop talking about it and to see what it actually looks like on the field. But there are 2 primary ESPN computer algorithm metrics that spit out numbers, and they could not be more diametrically opposed. FPI loves LSU. By far the highest ranked projection I've seen from any person or thing regarding LSU. The SP Plus, not so fond of the Tigers, in large part because LSU, in the returning production category, is 70th in the country. You lose a whole bunch of production from a team that was 500. Computers aren't going to like that. We'll see if reality can map differently. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.